We clarified the definition of the metaverse through the previous section and the importance of the identity system and the value system without which the metaverse would not exist. So how do these two systems actually work? What is the value of the identity system? What is the technical logic of the value system to generate transactions? And how do they work together to drive the metaverse? In this lesson, we will continue our exploration to see how these two systems actually work the identity. System of the metaverse. Let's look at the identity system first. What is an identity system in a nutshell? An identity system is an independent, unique, digital human identity with personal characteristics and the right and ability to participate and live together in the digital world freely. Doesn't that sound a bit complicated? Let me explain it to you. First of all, the identity system is a virtual identity carried by code and composed of numbers. Then this identity has to be independent. That is, it has the characteristics of an independent personality as mentioned in the last lecture. Finally, it has the right and ability to participate and live together freely. That is, we can make the rules of the metaverse freely and openly through this digital identity and participate in the activities of the metaverse together with different people. Why is identity one of the two most important systems? The reason is that it is the basis of all the factors of the metaverse. The value you create, the responsibility you attribute, the obligations you undertake, and the laws you follow in the metaverse are all attributed to identifying this identity. So how do we go about using this identity? You may say that the use of identity is not simple. Create an ID and generate identity roles. Then I tell you this identity is a little different because this identity is more independent than the game rule. You have a greater responsibility for it, planning its life and designing its future. You could say that it is another you but with a different life. Therefore, after establishing this identity, ID, no developer or game manager of the metaverse can remove this ID or destroy its value because, as we said in the previous lecture, the most important property of the identity system is independence, which means that this identity belongs to you only whether it is created, used or destroyed. So how is this independence achieved? This brings us to the underlying architecture of the metaverse. The blockchain. What is a blockchain? A blockchain is a ledger, a distributed ledger made up of decentralized nodes. This ledger consists of a string of data blocks generated using cryptographic correlation, which has the benefit of being tamper-proof and traceable. That sounds a bit obscure. So let me give you an example. Your classmate John borrows money from you, but you were afraid that John will renege on the loan. So you get your trusted professor Lee. Give the money to Professor Lee. Then Professor Lee transfers it to John, which is our current internet model. That is the centralized model, and Professor Lee is the new server. One day, Professor Lee is not teaching in your school, that is, the server has problems. Your money will not come back. Professor Lee said to the 50 students in your class, "Let's maintain the books separately." This gave rise to the distributed ledger. There are several features in it. For example, each student keeps an account and all students keep the same account, so this account cannot be forged, which is the tamper ability of blockchain. The accounts are held at the same point in time, which is the uniqueness of time. You want to trace the history of a transaction, which is the traceability. This way the security of the account is guaranteed. Of course, in a real blockchain, you can imagine that there are not only 50 students, in the whole chain, but hundreds of strangers who do not know each other and cannot collide with each other, and they form one bookkeeping node which constitutes what we call blockchain. Okay, with a brief understanding of blockchain, let's go back to the identity system. Why do we say that the identity system of the metaverse is completely independent? The reason is that the identity system takes advantage of the decentralized nature of the blockchain, which does not have a central administrator. Let's look at why the identity system is important. From the perspective of real-life experience, this importance is reflected in one word: freedom. What does freedom mean? This freedom has two dimensions. The first lies in the life experience brought by the multiple identities of the metaverse. For example, in the metaverse, you can choose to become an architect, a soldier, or astronaut, allowing you to give full play to your imagination and experience all kinds of life. The second dimension lies in the cell activity brought by identity, because the rules in the metaverse only specify what you cannot do and not what you can do. For example, you can build walls with pixels, and after adjusting the parameter, you can walk through the wall through free choice. You can keep exploring the boundaries of these rules and dig deeper into the possibilities of the metaverse. And this precisely is the difference between the metaverse and the game, to get the source of pleasure, because the game rules have criteria for winning, while the metaverse is more like the real world, where you have to go and be social, make friends, participate in different circles and groups, and use these identities to keep exploring and trial and error. This results in the you who realizes yourself, the you who gets frustrated and hides, and the you who is encouraged to blossom. They are all a reflection of your real life in different metaverse spaces. The value system of the metaverse. With the identity system out of the way, let's talk about another metaverse foundation, the value system. What is a value system? As we mentioned in the last lecture, in summary, it is the system where you exchange digital goods and digital assets in a digital world with a digital identity. To put it bluntly, it is the system that leads you to value creation and market transactions. There is another dimension to the value system, which is ethics and civilization. For example, what kind of code of life we set, how to resolve conflicts we encounter, what kind of values we have, and so on. What is it that makes the value system work just like the real world? It depends on scarcity. What does that mean? For example, the price of a diamond is high because of its scarcity. Only when something is scarce can it generate exchange value and transaction value. But you have to know one thing: the digital world is actually not conducive to establishing a value system. The reason is that the items in the digital world are made of code which can be copied infinitely, owned infinitely, and even shared infinitely if copyright is not considered. So how does the digital world of the metaverse solve this problem? We'll go back to its underlying technical logic. Again, relying on the blockchain, speaking of which, we have to introduce a new concept, NFT, non-fungible token, where you have to remember that NFT is a contract for digital copyright and digital property rights in the metaverse, because in the digital world, as we all know, everything can be copied and pasted. There can be countless copies. There is no uniqueness only when we have NFT, which wraps a contract of digital code around the items in the digital world. With this contract, digital items have the characteristic of being indivisible and mirror-reproducible. This solves the problem of the uniqueness of digital items, which can also be exchanged and traded. We are now jumping out to see a particularly hot phenomenon, which is the NFT market. So many people ask why an NFT that cannot be enlarged and has a meager resolution is so expensive. I like it. I want to use it. Just copy it. Don't make it. You should understand by now that the image you copy out is an item that is not wrapped in a digital contract, that is a pirated copy. And that has little value. Of course. Whether a digital item can be used for commercial purposes depends on what the author has written and stipulated in the contract for wrapping. The item NFT contract is divided into two parts. One part is standardized and the other is non-standardized. The standardized part is the two characteristics of the NFT we just described: indivisibility and reproducibility, which cannot be changed, and the non-standardized part is up to the author. For example, for a pixel apple, the author may ask you to make a profit of $20,000 before paying royalties. Or he may ask you not to use it for offline trading. Different authors will adapt the content of the NFT contract to different business environments and their own needs. Well, here we are done with the identity system and the value system, which work together to support the development